Welcome to C. Myers Live. I'm Rob Johnson, president of C. Myers,
And I'm Dan Myers, Vice President with C. Myers.
and we're excited that you're joining us today because we're going to be talking about achieving scale and automation in the industry and what it looks like for an institution and some of the benefits that they can get by doing that. And I'm glad that Dan's able to join us because it's something that he helps a lot of places to think through and to get a lot better at. So, Dan, why don't you talk about some of the things that people need to think about on this topic?
Yeah, obviously with everything going on, there's a lot of conversations about how can we, really control our expenses yet grow revenue. One of the key things that we see, I go back to my manufacturing distribution days, is financial institutions spend a lot of money on software.
Mhm.
A lot of times that software is sitting not doing things for more hours than it's actually doing things. And the hours when it's actually doing things, it could be doing more for you. So we call that asset utilization. And how can you take and just get more out of that expensive software that you're paying for, whether it's sitting doing nothing or producing for you? So when you're automating, how can you have it work overnight for you, have it work over the weekends, send in the automated messages, and really producing for you what the consumers want? In my background of Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma, we were constantly looking at, when our machinery and software is not working, what is it costing us? How's it bleeding our profits? And so our goal was to maximize the use of it. Should be the same really for financial institutions and really any business that they're spending money on, as far as using what we refer to as their assets in this.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense and really dialing it in, monitoring it, make adjustments, see what you get for that, keep making adjustments and being deliberate on that and recognizing that that is a huge investment. And you apply that same kind of logic to a loan origination system and you say, are we great at pulling through those applications and turning it into funded loans? And for a lot, I know that you study this a good bit for institutions. A lot of them have a much better pull through rate during work hours than after hours. And so, what are some of the types of things that they could be thinking about or doing?
Yeah, so no, really good point. And it's interesting you mentioned that, Rob, because the last, so we're working with a couple of places now that actually have a goal. Our off business hours needs to be faster than our in business hours. That's a goal. Now, again, a goal is an imperfect representation of what you're trying to achieve, but they're really saying this is what's going to push us with the automation. We want to have a higher pull through rate and less time to decision, less time to fund when we're not open than when we're open. And so a lot of places are moving in that direction, but carefully. So they're just not going to turn the spigot on, So using, for example, a specific loan type. Let's say you're not real good at direct auto loans, especially when you're not open, but you do pretty good with personal loans. And you want to get that part of the machinery, so to speak, spooled up and working really, really well. So imagine if you're pushing out a loan promotion, you walk in on a Monday morning and you originated several $100,000 of loans or several $1 million of loans, and with really few or no people. They are achievable goals. So start there, fine tune. I will bring into this, you want to be careful with automation, though. Just a little story on this one. I'm a member of a few different, banks, credit unions, whatnot, and last March I bought a Tesla, went through the loan process. It was very, very easy, automated, didn't have to speak to anybody. But apparently, one of these institutions got a hold of some new software, and they pushed out a promotion to me. They said, hey, we can save you X amount of dollars if you refinance your Tesla loan with us. So, of course, I'm interested. I opened it up and I was shocked by the offer. And I'm wondering if key decision makers know this is going out. So, really, what it was it said you can increase your rate from, let's say, 2% to 3.5% for the loan and pay it off in a year and save, maybe $1,000, but your payment will go up $3,500 a month. So it's it is laughable, but it's scary too, because you don't have the attention span of an audience for that long. So it took me 15 seconds to dismiss it, take pictures of it, because I'm in that business. I'm going to use it as an example for our clients at C. Myers. Be careful on this piece. So that's a mistake in the automation.
Well, and that goes to, one of our themes on this is, yes, it's very important to automate key things, but you don't go on autopilot.
Yeah.
Got to be evaluating it. You've got to look at it from different angles. Look at it from the consumer messaging. What are you doing? What are you offering as a difference maker for it? Does it make sense? Now, mathematically, if you pay your loan off in a year, you do pay less interest. So the math was technically right. And, if you think about it, not only do they lose that opportunity right then, but how likely are you to look to them as a trusted place to help you, manage your life, or to a solution provider in the future? How's your confidence feel about that place now?
It's dropped.
Yeah.
So on that, and then, kind of like, equating it to auto decisioning, you would never turn on auto decisioning or really ramp it up if you have it on already without really testing the heck out of it.
Yeah.
Where did it fail? What did it approve that we didn't want to approve? This should be no different in that. So our request is really make sure what it is you're doing. Do it right, because you don't have many chances to fail with the consumer.
Absolutely. And on that, doing it right, it often takes reevaluating their business rules.
Yeah.
What are those rules? And we work with a lot of institutions who have been around for a long time. And one of the problems with that is sometimes there's a good thing to having a lot of experience, but there's a double-edged sword here, because sometimes that experience comes with a lot of legacy problems and decisions of that's how we've always done it. And so some of those business rules were because of a problem that happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and they just built it in. And just automating a rule that's no longer necessary isn't going to get the outcomes that you want either. And so I know, while we're talking an example of asset utilization from the technology perspective, it's as important to do it from the business rule perspective as to how to make more of our product and our assets, and how we work for the consumer to get them what they need. So really evaluating that. So any fun stories on the business rule side?
Yeah, I'll give an example of a place that we're working with now, and they had a problem several years ago as we're mapping with their credit cards in approving and sending credit cards out where they shouldn't have. Okay, so now fast forward, they've gotten a new LOS, they've done all these things, but they shoved their old business rules into the new LOS. So what we uncovered through the mapping of the process and going through the painful, what's next? What's the next step? Are you sure this is it? Was 4 people, 4 different entities at a credit union looking at a credit card application prior to approving it, even though it was auto approved. Okay, now what we did was we had to nudge them and kindly remind them a little bit. Well, you have this automated fraud detection in, you have these other things in, it's a member. Why are you still doing this? Well, it's one of our procedures. It's a process that we put in place. We don't want to go away from. And then we mapped out for them. Well, here's the time that it's costing you to do that. What are you finding? And having the doers in the room, they're saying, we're not finding any errors. We're not finding any errors. And even if you did have an error or two, every business process is going to have an error no matter how well you make it. So what's your risk appetite? What is the cost of the quality you're trying to avoid? And it doesn't make sense. Perfection in something like this for every single application is probably a safe way to diminish returns.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, a reminder that really, you're in the business to take and manage risk. And that's not just the interest rate risk, credit risk, liquidity risk. It is that business and process side, but do it, as you said, test it, prove it out. And if you're finding you're not catching anything and you're just wasting this effort, then reserve the right to be better in the future with a well-designed process can actually help avoid more errors. Because sometimes, what do you think that fourth person who was looking at it was thinking? Well, three people already looked at this. And so, one, you talk about job satisfaction. If you're doing, 100 of those a week, and now, okay, 100 times you're just wasting your time. If I'm thinking about what job I want to be doing, that might hurt things there too. And so that connects with the other things that we've talked about as to, what we want to be able to do and what kind of experiences we want for the consumer and our employees and our institution. And so as we're talking about the scale, what we might scale and what we might automate, one of the things that we've found in the different areas and discussions is how important it is to not only, of course, achieve scale, because the efficiencies that can happen and the way that you can produce a lot more with less on that, but also being deliberate on what you scale and prioritizing. And you gave the example starting off with something you're really good at. And it's interesting because you can mathematically improve an institution by growing everything. Let's say the loans, the deposits, the services, let's scale everything up. Let's try and do all of that. But sometimes if you take too much on, you might not get the progress that you're looking for because it can be overwhelming and everyone's busy. So really being deliberate at first as to what you're working on. And you find though, if we can grow this scale, yes, we'll get benefit, but what if we just scaled one area really well? And then once we did that, yeah, I think one of your favorite phrases, when you get something down really well, what do you then do?
Copy exact. Yeah,
That's
yeah. You copy exact it. You make the changes that are needed for that specific, let's say, loan type or product or whatever it is you're doing. It makes it very, very easy to do.
Yeah, and there was an example of a place that we're working with, and to get the earnings objectives that they wanted, they needed to grow their loans 25%. But then step back and said, well, what if you focus, and this is where analyzing and understanding profit potential of your different business lines and incorporating that into your ALM understanding and your decision making. So there's a big connection to process, operations, production,
Mhm.
ALM. All those things are interconnected. And all of a sudden you look at that and say, well, here are the top 2 or 3 things that we need to be great at. And all of a sudden, instead of having to grow loans 25% to hit that goal that they wanted, they actually only need to grow 15%, still a lot, but they would get more earnings out of that 15% than that 25. And it's something that they could see that outcome much sooner because of that focus. And I think that's one of those big areas for people to work on is that, very intentional focus on the right things.
Yeah, no, you're right. And think of it this way: is it costs to train people. If an institution's going to really try to maximize all loan products at the same time, we would say, yeah, consider not doing that. Get really good at one of them, take those learnings and apply it to the other ones. Put all that training on somebody. Institutions need to pause for a second, say, what are we asking our people to learn and in what time frame?
Yes.
You will force some burnout on that if you push too much.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and probably what we should leave this with, because if you follow those things, that alone gives some pretty good momentum for what you can do as an institution. But as you know, here at Sue Myers, we love talking about these things. We love working through and differentiating institutions by having them figure out what's best for them. So if you want to talk more about it, if you need any help on these areas, please reach out to us.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.